a massive welcome to those of you at the centre, and a welcome to everybody who's on Zoom as well. And I can see some of you if I turn this way, which is very tempting actually, but I'm going to keep looking forward into the camera and to the people that are here. So as Mike Jivasan said, it feels really significant to me. This is our first hybrid Sangha Night. Some of us are able to be together physically, even if we're having to wear masks, and I'm standing behind a plastic screen. That might be, well, there's a kind of, that's quite interesting, rigged up. I think Observance and friends rigged up this amazing screen that we can kind of raise and lower. So I'm behind a screen. So the Buddha said that one of the factors that led to the success and growth of the Sangha is that we meet in large numbers. And Zoom has been so much better than I thought at connecting us. I've really loved seeing everyone on the screen, and I've particularly loved seeing those Sangha members who now live in different countries, or maybe Sangha members who've got parenting or caring responsibilities, or whose health means they can't come to the centre. And it's been really great that so many people have been able to be part of our online Sangha nights. But there's also something very wonderful about being physically with people. And I'm sure that everyone's appreciated that maybe as they've been able, if people have been able to go out a little bit more, that it's just great when you meet someone in the flesh, the whole kind of 360 degrees of a person that you can't quite pick up on Zoom. So I think it's really special that this is the start of us being able to together go on Sangha Night. So at the beginning of lockdown, I think I was a little bit kind of naive maybe, and I imagined that when we came out of lockdown, there'd be this kind of, one day you'd just come out of lockdown and we would have this huge puja here, really energetic, and there'd be loads of hugging. Like Mike Jivasan would be really exhausted by the end of the night because there'd be so much hugging going on. But that isn't the way it is it? It seems to be the way is that we're opening up for meditation, for different things, for newcomers, and tonight for Sangha Night. But I thought it was really important that we mark tonight ritually. That we mark this as we go along. So what we're going to start tonight with is by doing a dedication ceremony together. Okay, in call and response. And you will have to bear with us tonight because there's all sorts of practical things we're trying to work out how they work. Okay. So if you want to just get comfortable in how you're sitting. And bringing your awareness to wherever you are right now. So if you're here in the Buddhist Centre, an awareness of yourself sitting on your chair, here with other people in the Buddhist Centre. But if you're at home, a sense of yourself in the room that you're in, and all those other people as well, all of us together as Sangha, even though we're in different physical spaces. So holding in your mind the Sangha as we dedicate tonight and do the dedication ceremony. So just do it. I'll just say a line. If you haven't done this before, I'll say a line and you just respond, whether it's in the hall or whether it's at home. So dedication ceremony to the Sheffield Sangha. We dedicate this Sangha to the three jewels. We dedicate this Sangha to the three jewels. To the Buddha. The ideal of enlightenment to which we aspire. The ideal of enlightenment to which we aspire. To the Dharma. To the Dharma. The path of the teaching which we follow. The path of the teaching which we follow. To the Sangha. To the Sangha. The spiritual fellowship with one another which we enjoy. The spiritual fellowship with one another which we enjoy. Here may no idle word be spoken. Here may no unquiet thought disturb our minds. To the observance of the 5 precepts. We dedicate this Sangha. To the practice of meditation. We dedicate this Sangha. To the development of wisdom. We dedicate this Sangha. To the attainment of enlightenment. We dedicate this Sangha. Though in the world outside there is strife. Here may there be peace. Though in the world outside there is hate. Here may there be love. Though in the world outside there is grief. Here may there be joy. Not by the chanting of the sacred scriptures. Not by the sprinkling of holy water. But by our own efforts towards enlightenment. We dedicate this Sangha. Around this mandala. This sacred spot. May the lotus petals of purity open. Around this mandala. This sacred spot. May the Vajra wall of determination extend. Around this mandala. This sacred spot. May the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana arise. Here seated. Here practicing. May our mind become Buddha. May our thought become Dharma. May our communication with one another be Sangha. For the happiness of all beings. For the benefit of all beings. With body, speech and mind. We dedicate this Sangha. Okay, so we're in the theme at Sangha Night of the Noble Eightfold Path, as became clear last week. I think it was only last week that we talked about that. And we've got to the stage of emotion. And actually we're spending a lot of weeks on emotion. And the reason for that is that our emotions drive us, really. Emotions give us the power that make us act, that make us actually act on things. So it comes in the Noble Eightfold Path. Emotion comes after vision, and then after that there's a whole load of actions that we can take in the world, like right speech, right livelihood. And emotion is a really important part of the Noble Eightfold Path, because if our emotions aren't fired up, well, we won't do. We'll lead a bit of a lukewarm life, and also we might find ourselves not able to actually carry out what we'd like to do. You can think about what it is, how it is when you're emotionally engaged, what it will make you do, kind of the lengths that people will go to when they fall in love. They'll move continents to be with the person that they love, what people will do in the grip of craving, what people will do when they're really angry. Emotions really make us actually take action. So there's something about we need to really get our emotions on our side. And today we're exploring one of the most effective, almost magical, I would say, practices, in fact it is magical, that we can do that can link our intellectual ideas to our emotions. So for instance, you'll all have come across, I hope, the idea of the lakshanas, the three lakshanas, the marks of conditioned existence, which we talk about the first night of the newcomers course. And one of those is that we're interconnected. So expressed in another way, that means there are no separate things in the world. There are only processes, and that includes ourselves. So it might feel like we're a separate identity kind of moving through an external world, but actually we're completely interconnected with all the other processes going on. And I can know this on an intellectual level, I've heard it a lot, but it's very hard to emotionally know it and then to act as if there's no fixed and isolated self to protect. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time, or some time, on a very easy practice that we can do wherever we are, whoever we are, whatever's going on, and yet it can transform us, it can literally turn us around. And that's, of course, the practice of gratitude. So gratitude, I think, works on so many different levels for us all, physical, psychological, spiritual, and I'm sure all sorts of other levels as well. So physically, practicing gratitude, there's been quite a lot of experimental work done on gratitude. And if we daily have a practice of gratitude, it can change our heart rate, lower our blood pressure. I think it can change the structure of our brain, actually. Because apparently we think between 15,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day, which is quite a lot, and maybe 70 to 80% of those are negative. So, and actually, hopefully, at least 50% of the time, you're having some kind of a positive or even a neutral experience of your life. So we have a negativity bias. And that's a really important thing that we evolved, that we needed to be looking at all the time for what might be a threat to us. But we live in a different world now. And actually, the truth is, the reality is that life is a mixture of joy and sorrow. And that gratitude practice can really change things around so we can be much more in touch with what's really going on. And so that means that on a psychological level, it also works really well. Probably most of you know that for many psychologists recommend that if you're depressed, if you have depression, doing a daily practice of gratitude can really help. And I know that myself. I know that when my dad died and I slipped into a kind of depression, doing a gratitude practice every day just really helped me lift my mood. And spiritually, I think it's a really, really powerful practice as well, because it turns us from craving, so that's what I'm lacking something, what can I get, turns us right round, transforms us into what can I give. So interestingly, when the Buddha, who talked about generosity, he used a Pali word, which is katanyata, which maybe could even go in the chat box later. I can write it out in the chat box. And so it's interesting because the Pali word that's translated as gratitude, katanyata, is actually quite an intellectual word. What it means is that we recognize and know what has been done for our benefit. So basically, we recognize the benefits that we have received, the benefits. So it's quite an intellectual word, that it's quite a cognitive sense, whereas gratitude might feel more emotional. And it's interesting because I'm talking about developing emotion, but there's something about actually thinking about the benefits we've received in an intellectual way, which allows a very positive and natural sense of gratitude to arise. So the reality of our lives is we are not independent selves, we live in a network of relationships. Without others, we would die. We'd never have been born, and we certainly wouldn't survive more than a few days. And maybe lockdown showed that, it showed like when everything kind of comes to a halt, how dependent we are on others for our food, for our care. And the fact that we owe our existence to all these human relationships is just one example of how we exist as interdependent beings. We also depend on our ecosystem, our society. We are not standalone beings. And seeing this interdependence is an aspect of the highest wisdom. It's an insight into what's called conditioned co-production. And what that means basically is that everything is dependent on conditions. So there's nothing in me or you that is independent. So my very body comes from the food that I eat, the water that I drink, the DNA from my parents, the kind of magical way in which I eat things and then they turn into my bones and my blood, my lungs, my liver. All of that is just, I have taken that from somewhere else. When people go on their ordination training retreat, they take on a practice called the 6-element practice, where we look at the different elements within us. So that sense of solidity, which is the earth element. And that we might feel that in our skeleton, for instance. But of course, our bones, even though they seem quite solid, they're changing all the time. And all they are is the calcium and all sorts of other things that we take in to our bodies. So basically, our bodies are a flow. There's nothing permanent in our bodies. And it's not just our bodies. These words that I'm using, these very words that I'm using now, they've been taught to me by other people. So my parents and my teachers taught me to speak English. And that's why I'm using these words that I'm using now. This talk that I'm giving comes from loads of other people. It comes from some notes from Vidanya. It comes from lots of things I've heard about gratitude, katanyata over the years. It's not that I'm not having my own independent thoughts here. What I'm doing is I'm bringing in all sorts of ideas that I've heard from lots of people and then communicating them to you. So it's like I am just this nexus in the web of life, as are you. So when we can see how dependent we are on others for everything that we have, the emotional response to that is gratitude. And that can lead to a desire to give back, to make our own contribution to this web of benefit, to serve this bigger world that we're part of. So gratitude can transform our whole approach to life and other people. So instead of focusing on like, oh, I'm not getting this, I've got resentment, this kind of like 70 to 80% of our thoughts every day, which are negative, there's like, I'm not getting what I want. It can turn it round so we can see what we already have. And then we might think, well, what can, from that gratitude, a wish to be generous, to give back will naturally arise. And it will lead to us having better relationships with other people. So we're going to have a chance at doing that ourselves in a minute. But first of all, I'm just going to talk through about the nexus, which is Sangha Night, and talk about how that is made up of so many different conditions. So, so in the mood of celebrating the Sangha and what conditions have led us to be here, I just want to call to mind some of the people who've made it possible to be here or on Zoom. And I'm going to leave loads of people out, of course, because there's so many people involved. So if you're someone I've left out who's contributed, my apologies in advance. So I guess we wouldn't be here without the Buddha. So without the Buddha's dedication to seeing through reality, without his compassion to teach, we wouldn't be here. We also wouldn't be here if Ananda, who was his companion, hadn't memorized so many of the Buddha's teachings, which we can then follow. So then I'm not going to say the names, but there's lots of Buddhist teachers over the 2,500 years. But jumping ahead till maybe about 90 years ago, we certainly wouldn't be here in this room if it wasn't for Sangha, the founder of Triratna, and amongst many things, a great inspirer of people to actually set up their own Buddhist centres, to go out and pioneer and set up centres. Then there are all the early pioneers and founders of the Sheffield Buddhist Centre. So I'm saying these because without them, we wouldn't have a Sangha and we wouldn't be having a Sangha night. So they include Susiddhi, the first chair, who has died now, sadly, Amoghavansha, who's in the room, Achara, who's up on the wall somewhere, Vajratara, Vedanya, also on the wall, Punyamala, and many, many others. So after the following on in their footsteps, there are those who took on responsibilities at the centre over many years. So Sihapada, who's very elderly now, Padmavati, Moksha Leela, Shantasiddhi, Dayapurna, Suryamati, who's there somewhere on the wall, Maitrudasa, Dharma Mai, and many others. There's all the people who are taking responsibility now for things at the centre. So there's Mokshatara and Bodhinaga. Bodhinaga's here, which is fantastic. Aryadasa, Maitrivasan, me. There's the Hridaya team at the centre. They look after the admin and the building. So Helen, Gav, Sarah Blagden, Edward, and many others who've been part of that team over the years. Aryasaki, Dairakshita, Simon, many others. So this is the wider, some of the people who've contributed for us to have a Sangha. Coming to Sangha Night itself, a key person, a really key person is Vedanya, who, as well as giving wonderful talks, plays a huge role behind the scenes. He suggests ideas for the series and the talks, and he regularly meets with us to plan Sangha Night. There's the tech team. I don't know what we would do without them, particularly since we've gone on to Zoom. So particularly Aryadasa, Edward, Vicky, and many others who've supported them. I mean, really, I think the creativity and persistence of the tech team has just been extraordinary, a great contribution. There's a whole load of people who've developed and implemented our COVID-19 risk assessments. There's been procedures, so Maitrivasan, Gav, Aryadasa, Sarah Blagden, Helen, Edward, Amoghavansha and his friends who built an amazing set of screens that we're using here. Then at Sangha Night itself, we have the group leaders week after week, Achara, Sangha Suryamati, Dairakshita, many others. People leading meditations like Achara tonight. Those who've given talks who are a bit too many to mention, actually. I started writing out all the names. I mean, the great thing about Zoom is since lockdown, we've had loads of talks, which have been like people in their homes giving short talks. So thank you to all of those. I can't name you all. And I guess most importantly, all of you who are on Zoom or here in the room. So all of you, without you, there would be no Sangha. And everyone gives in so many different ways. Over the Sangha Works mornings, we've had, I think, nearly 80 people, maybe just a few individual people, but 80 different people have come along to those work mornings giving to the centre. People give money so that we can run it. I think even last week we had someone turned up with an anonymous financial donation, which was amazing. So it's like all of us here, all of you at home, all of us in the room, we co-create a magical Sangha which is manifesting here and now. And it wouldn't be the same without any one of us. So because we're about to do an exercise, I thought we wouldn't have a round of applause at the end, but we might have a round of applause now, where we can just appreciate each other and ourselves in the spirit of gratitude, of Katanyata, for the benefits that we give to each other. So Vicky, if you could unmute us, have you done that? Yeah, great. Okay, so just thank you to everybody. Okay, so when I was thinking about, well, writing a little bit about the Sangha Night, maybe on Facebook or on the email, I said, have a pen and pencil, have a pencil or pen and a piece of paper ready. So hopefully most people have got one to hand. And what we're going to do now, it's a bit like I just did for Sangha Night, looking at all those different conditions, the people that have given so that Sangha Night happens. Put yourself at that nexus of the web of conditions. So you can write your name in the middle, however you do, or at the top. And then what we're going to do is have about 10 minutes, maybe a bit less, maybe about 8 minutes actually, where everybody can write down everybody they can think of who has contributed, who you have benefited from. So everyone who has been of benefit to you, if you write their names down. And it is great if you can be specific about the name. If you can't, it's better to be as specific as you can. So instead of something like, I don't know, all doctors, you might write down that anaesthetist who really saved my life. Do you see what I mean? So be as specific as you can. So if you don't know their names, it would be specifically that person. Okay. And some of you will be really quick with this and some will be a bit slower. If you're a quick person, I suggest that at the end, you go back and you really take in all those names. Because there's something about giving yourself time to appreciate and take in the benefits that you've received that makes it much more powerful. Okay, so if you just go now, and then I'm going to ring a bell for us to finish in about 7 minutes from now. Okay, so if you finish now, for now, you could always carry on later if you haven't come to the end of the people that you have benefited from. And then in about 10 minutes, we'll go into groups and it'll be an opportunity to talk about how you felt about doing that exercise. Okay, so Maitri-Vasin, is there anything else I should say now, or should we just have a 10-minute break and then come back? Okay, great. Okay, so time for a 10-minute break and then we'll come back together.